All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started just to be cognizant of everybody's time. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. I hope everybody's having a nice day so far. You are a part of this webinar. It's called Start an Internship. It's the second part of our series. This part is called Being a Supportive Supervisor. So if you weren't able to join us last week, I will go ahead and share a recording of that webinar so that you can have access to it. And you can view it on your own time. But again, this specific webinar will be covering how to be a supportive supervisor. Just some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and again, the purpose is to share it out for those that maybe signed up but weren't able to join us. And then also making sure that you understand if you have any questions, please pose those in the question and answer function in this webinar, and we'll go ahead and get to those at the end of the webinar. So just some brief introductions. My name is Courtney Walker. I'm our Associate Director for our Employer Relations Team in Career and Professional Development Services. I'm also joined by Hannah McIntyre. Hannah?
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Hannah McIntyre. I'm an Assistant Director with the Career Readiness Team with Career and Professional Development Services.
So just a brief glimpse at today's agenda. I plan to recap a little bit of the important items that we talked about last week, and then we're going to transition into mentorship and supervision, followed by evaluation, and then we're going to end with growth conversations, and then what it means to conclude and transition from a project-based internship as a supervisor. So these are the competencies that we expect students to grow in during their experience at Arizona State University. These competencies can be gained through academic experiences, through their involvement in student clubs and organizations, even through maybe if they're choosing to work either part-time or full-time, and then of course through these different internship experiences such as the one that we're talking about today as a project-based internship. So we're including them in the PowerPoint presentation really to have a conversation around and hoping that you would be considerate and intentional about how you could incorporate one or even more than one of these competencies into your project-based internship. Because a project-based internship is short-term in nature, the expectation is that you wouldn't include all of them in the actual experience, but maybe consider at least maybe one or two to include in them. For some of you, it may look like they are soft skills in nature, and they could easily be summed up as soft skills, but really what career competencies are is they are a similar language between the employer and our students. So we heard from employers, and when I say we, I mean as a national association that we're a part of colleges and employers, we heard from employers that they believe that our students weren't prepared for the workforce. But what we came to understand is that there was not the language that a student was speaking on a resume and an interview was vastly different than what an employer heard. And so really what the solution was is these career competencies. So when a student says that they're competent in teamwork and collaboration, the employer understands that the level of experience a student has in that area may be inclusive of working in a diverse team setting, or maybe the group of a team the size of the team that they were a part of was diverse, so small and large. So when a student comes to an employer and says that they're competent in that area, the employer understands truly what it means that they're competent in that area. So again, the idea is that you would be intentional about building one or more than one of these into your project-based internship. Also, recapping what is a project-based internship. So the difference between a project-based internship and an actual internship experience really is the duration of the experience for the student. So project-based internships are short-term professional development assignments that conclude with a final plan, recommendation, or specific outcome. These projects enable students to build skills, demonstrate learned knowledge, explore career paths, and build networks aligned with their interests. project-based internships span across departments, including marketing, technology, HR, and finance. And that's just to name a few. Really, the idea is that this internship is not based in what your department is as it relates to maybe your mission or vision as a department, but really based on the project that you have to offer as the actual department or school unit. And so I used this idea or this example last week, and I'll use it again. When we host project-based interns in our department, those interns don't necessarily have an explicit interest in career services, but we do have a marketing department in our area that they can actually take interest in, and that's what their focus is. So again, it really is focused more on the project rather than the actual department. And when I say short term, just to give an idea of the average range of time, we're looking at maybe a minimum of 5 hours to take part in this project, all the way up into about 40 hours of project time that could be used. So as you think through and decide on what that project might look like for you as a supervisor, that's really the range of time that you're looking at, and you can be considerate of. So last week we covered the first three, if you're going clockwise, the first three topics. And so today's time we will wrap up with the final two topics in this cycle of project-based internships. Hannah, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so as we think about mentorship, supervision, and evaluating, we're going to first discuss supervision and the kind of areas of that. So the supervisor of the project-based internship needs to be aware of what those responsibilities, expectations, and learning objectives are of the project-based internship, and they will oversee the completion of that project. In addition, this supervisor has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to train that student intern and teach them those learning areas. And then the supervisor also is going to be willing to commit the time to communicate and evaluate that student intern and their project. And so some things to think about, tips for success in supervising student interns are that open line of communication. Students really appreciate that and thrive on that. And so giving clear direction on what is needed, what the goals of the project are, and also giving feedback. So highlighting the areas that the student did well on the project, and this is something that can be ongoing through the project, not just waiting until the end, but also highlighting any areas of improvement. This is a learning experience for our students, and so really giving feedback on how they may improve on those areas rather than just telling them that something was done incorrectly, turning it into a teaching moment. Also, another tip for success is routine check-ins. So frequently checking in order to, again, maintain that open line of communication, but also so the student knows that the supervisor is available for any questions they may have through the project. And then along those same lines, being question friendly. So again, it's a learning experience for our students, and it's important that they feel comfortable asking questions, especially if they need more information, directions, or clarification on what they're doing. And then lastly, flexibility. So as we know, students, they are students first. And so as they take on a project-based internship, we do ask that supervisors remember that they are students first and they have their class schedule. And so we ask that the supervisor be as flexible as possible to work around that class schedule. And then moving into mentorship. So mentorship sometimes can be a big word. It can sometimes feel a little bit daunting, but just remembering that mentorship is a relationship, which is more of an experience, more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced or maybe less knowledgeable person. And so this mentor offers additional time, expertise, networks to support or enhance the learning of the student intern. And in addition, the mentor also provides that guidance and feedback as well as support about the work that is being completed. And then lastly, a mentor encourages professional and personal development based on conversations had with the mentee. And in this case, that would be our student intern. So, Courtney, I'll give it back to you to go over the evaluation.
And so just to add a little bit about the supervision and mentorship piece, the expectation is that, you may be the supervisor, you may be the mentor, you may be the supervisor and the mentor, whatever that might mean for your student and their experience, just being considerate about what the different roles might entail. Also, the benefit of having a mentor as a student, obviously everything that Hannah just said, but maybe it's not a viable option for you to be able to serve that role or have somebody in your organization serve that role, in which case we in Career and Professional Development Services do have a platform that can support a mentorship role. And so that resource is called the ASU Mentorship Network, and that will be shared with you in a follow-up email as well. So again, it's meant to supplement the student's experience. It's not necessarily a requirement of their experience, but definitely something that would enhance the learning of that student, which is obviously the goal when it comes to a project-based internship. So the next part of the conversation really revolves around evaluating the student intern. And I don't know, for those of you that are on the call, just total transparency, I myself supervise both students and professional staff, and evaluation tends to be, that time of the year tends to be one of the most exciting and yet one of the most daunting experiences of my position. And so it's not any different, and it shouldn't be any different when it comes to evaluating your student intern. And it's an essential part of the internship experience for that student. So I put on there some things to remember when it comes to evaluating the student intern. And one thing that I want to point out is more in the other important things to remember category. So when you are evaluating the student intern, really going back to that posting that you had posted in Handshake, and looking at what it is that student and the expectations and the responsibility that you put on that student, as well as what was discussed between you and the student that they would actually learn. So again, expectations of you from the employer's perspective, as well as the learning objectives of the student. And so really, what is the gap? So at the end of that experience, was there a gap in that? And evaluating the experience alongside the student to find out what it is that they learned and maybe what they could have done better in that experience, whether it is they didn't meet your specific expectations, or maybe you as the supervisor didn't necessarily meet their learning objectives. And so having that very open dialogue when it comes to the evaluation setting is something that might be very uncomfortable for some of you, but definitely essential and integral to that student experience. I myself was a student intern when I was in school, and I can still remember those conversations were the most valuable in my learning, beyond even the actual experience in the actual internship. And so thinking and being thoughtful in your conversations when it comes to evaluation, just remembering that impact that you're having on that student could be pretty significant, which comes with a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of good things as well. So just keeping that in the back of your minds. Making sure you're providing positive and then also not so positive feedback. again, these conversations are important to the student to make sure that they understand where they can continue to develop more if need be, but also, of course, what they're doing really well as well. So all of these different pieces really come together in this space to have what we call as growth conversations. So again, whether you're the mentor and the supervisor, or maybe you're just one of them, and then obviously the culmination of the evaluation piece of it, we really want to make sure that we understand it's our responsibility as higher education professionals to consistently be pushing our students from where they're at to where they want to go. So because they're taking advantage of this project-based internship, we know they want to grow. They want to grow in a skill set. So really we want to make sure that we're intentional about not only thinking about what our needs are as professional staff and supervisors, or even the needs of our department. And of course, those are very important in the experience. But that we also really want to make sure we're putting the student and their growth in the middle of all of it. And so that's the premise of having these evaluation conversations, these growth conversations. And so when you think about what it means to be a mentor versus what it means to be a supervisor, really that mentor is in that teaching, in that modeling space. That supervisor is in that day-to-day leadership space. And so really thinking about when you're coming into these conversations, what role are you playing in that conversation, and being intentional about what kind of conversation you're having, and even the setting of the conversation. And there's lots of times to have these types of conversations, whether it is, they're sitting at a desk and they're working on the project, or maybe they are texting you outside of their work hours, getting your opinion on something because now you've become that trusted mentor. There's lots of different places to have these growth conversations. And oftentimes it comes in that space of that gap. So what it is that they want to grow in, and where it is that you need them to grow in, and how do they get there? What is that bridge? And again, that's where the growth conversations can happen. So in these conversations, what we would advise is asking very powerful, what we call powerful questions. And so obviously they want to grow. You want them to grow to be able to achieve that project-based internship outcome for you and the department. So asking questions like, what haven't they considered in terms of tools that they might need, whether it is tools to complete the project. Maybe you're having a conversation with them about what their long-term goals are. And so what tools do they need to achieve those long-term goals? That's one thing that that's one powerful question that you might want to consider. Other things are maybe helping them to explore lots of different options related to whether it is related to the project-based internship in that supervisor role, or in the mentor role, asking them again, what kind of long-term goals do they have? So helping them think through options, helping them go through and decide what's going to be best for them. It can look very different depending on, again, whether you're a mentor or a supervisor having these growth conversations. So now wrapping up, thinking through the end of that project-based internship. And the end is just as important as the beginning. So after you've completed that final evaluation, you want to consider facilitating a formalized exit interview process. And so this is going to allow that intern to provide feedback in order to assess the effectiveness of the project-based internship that you've provided. It also gives you an opportunity to make any changes that you might be able to take advantage of to enhance the experience for future internships that you might want to be able to host. So again, it's critical to keep communication very clear and open throughout this whole experience of this project-based internship, all to culminate towards the end of the internship. That way you can get as much good feedback that you need. If you're willing to be a reference for that intern, make sure you're providing contact information. Be considerate of that contact information. If you've been mostly a supervisor in that role, you'll want to be considerate of providing that professional contact information. Maybe you are serving more in that mentor role and you're okay with giving out a cell phone or a different type of email address. Just be considerate of what role you're serving in that student intern's experience. A great in the middle type of contact information would be connecting with them on LinkedIn. That way also they benefit from additional networking opportunities that you might have. And that was one thing too, that as a supervisor, providing opportunities for them to network. Again, this is a short-term experience, but if you have opportunities for them to network, even if it's, you invite them to a staff meeting, a virtual staff meeting or an in-person staff meeting, whatever that looks like, or maybe your team hosts a after hours, social gathering. I would not advocate for a happy hour necessarily, but maybe it's a coffee chat of sorts. That would be an additional networking opportunity that they could take advantage of to get to know the team, to get to know the culture. That way they can connect with your staff team in a way that's outside of that, project-based internship time that they would be using. And then lastly, if they have any copies or files that would link to the projects that they've completed, share that with them. Or if it's confidential in nature, maybe provide some alternate different ways that they can surface their project and their outcomes. Maybe at the end of the internship, you have them do, like a PowerPoint or some sort of demonstration of work that they've done, so that they can actually surface it on their LinkedIn. Or maybe they're working on an e-portfolio and for a class project. Something, again, that they can demonstrate their work and that you can actually sign off on as something that they've done. So it was a pretty brief presentation for you today because it was the second part of our series. And so just some next steps and resources for you to take advantage of. Again, if you have not yet taken inventory of current and future projects that you have in your own queue of projects, or maybe your staff team's queue of projects, please do so. This will give you a good idea of what would be good opportunities for your potential student intern. And then also, if you've not done so yet, and I've heard from a few of you, which I'm really excited about for our students, is please fill out a form to request an employer account. And then, of course, all of these resources will be shared with you in a follow-up email. And so if you've not yet taken a look at them, I'm going to encourage you to do so. Again, included is a project-based internship guide. This is a special guide that we created just for the conversation that we're having with you today. Additionally, we share with our employers the virtual internship guide. This will help you launch or think through maybe some other points that you have not thought through in terms of a virtual internship experience. Hannah runs and facilitates an internship professional network. So if you're not yet a part of this network, this is our invitation to you to become a part of this network. She has set up a Google site that surfaces a lot of these different resources. So this Google site will be shared with you as well. This is a duplication, but that Handshake employer account. And then also Career and Professional Development Services has launched a response site to COVID-19. And so you can direct your student interns, and if you work with students just in general, day to day, you can direct them to that website to get some really good resources. They're all virtual resources so that they can take advantage of some of those different opportunities that are on that website as well. And then lastly, as you set up your Handshake account as an employer, So again, this conversation today is really dialoguing with you as an employer. Handshake has some really great frequently asked questions that I'm going to share with you, so that as you set up your account and as you kind of navigate through that account, you can go back to that FAQ to get some good ideas or address some questions that you might have. But of course, you have me and you have Hannah to support you in those conversations. Of course, I'm going to be as hands-on with each of you as possible as you're setting up your project-based internships. We really want these opportunities surfaced to our students. So however I can support that, I am happy to do so. I've heard from a few of you already, and we're already working together. So please continue to send questions my way. So I'm going to pause there and let anybody who has any questions put them in the Q&A function, and we're going to go ahead and answer some questions right now. So do you have or provide an example of an exit interview? Absolutely. I will provide an example of what that could look like in a follow-up email. And so be on the lookout for that when I send that follow-up email. All right, I'm going to hang out for a couple more minutes. Hannah and I will hang out for a couple more minutes for any other questions that might come through. But of course, you have my email and Hannah's email on there as well. Do not hesitate to send us an email, whatever that looks like. I've been setting up, just to give you an idea, I've been setting up 30-minute meetings with those that have requested it, just to talk through what a project-based internship could look like. There were some questions about the duration of that internship and if it could be more than 40 hours. And of course, it could be more than 40 hours. It would just be dependent on what the project is. You might also consider too having more than one student intern. We didn't talk about that during this specific webinar time. We did talk about that last week. You might consider having more than one student intern, and that's definitely a possibility. We do ask that these are paid experiences. That benefits our students tremendously. And so also in this follow-up email, I will send along hiring forms. We've worked with student employment to make it as easy as possible to hire. And so you don't even have to post these in Connexa. We're asking you to post these in Handshake. And you'll just submit a hiring form. And so I will send all of those resources along to you in a follow-up email. So again, the goal is to make this as easy as possible. Okay, so I will go ahead and conclude our time today. Of course, we're available, and please let us know as you have any questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.